right, let's begin by bringing you the latest on the COVID numbers and the Omicron figures in the country. A total of 578 cases have been detected so far. The maximum coming in from the national capital, 142. Just one ahead of Maharashtra, which is at 141, followed by Telangana, Karnataka, all in double digits as of this moment. Orissa, Jammu and Kashmir, West Bengal, Andhra Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh also seeing two Omicron figures. There are 3 in Chandigarh, 1 in Ladakh, Uttarakhand, Madhya Pradesh, Himachal Pradesh, and over 16 states now. We've had cases of Omicron crop up. In fact, if you take away from these figures and look only at the national capital, which has seen the maximum number of Omicron cases, and also in the past 24 hours, a very high number as well. 331 cases in the past 24 hours. The positivity rate for the second day in the row is above 0.5%. That means that the yellow alert has already happened in the national capital. That means more curbs have already kicked in. These figures, both in Delhi, being seen in Mumbai as well, are breaking records of several months as of this moment, which meant new curbs have actually come in. Also in the national capital today, night curfew will be imposed. It starts from tonight, and this is coming when over 300 cases have actually been reported in the past 24 hours. All right, all this is also happening as India is now counting down to not a booster dose that government calls, but a precaution dose, as has been termed by the Prime Minister. And in series of meetings that happened today, NDTV picked up from sources a lot of intel, telling us that the booster shot or the precaution dose, that the Prime Minister has described it, will be the same as the old vaccine. So those who got Covishield would get Covishield, those who got Covaxin will get Covaxin. The government, however, very interestingly, is not calling it a booster dose at all. It's calling it a precautionary shot, also adding through sources that they're not very clear on their booster dose strategy just yet. This effectively means that there will be no mixing of cocktails, at least for now, that the government has talked about. How does that really pan out is something we'll take up. Also, what has happened is that details have actually come out of how vaccination of children will take place between age 15 and 18. The registration for kids between the age of 15 and 18 will actually begin on the first day of January 2022. Kids can upload their school ID cards on the Goverment website and get their registration done. They obviously do not have Aadhars or voter ID cards as of this moment. They'll take registration numbers and vaccination will begin from the 3rd, 4th of January. Kids, meanwhile, have a choice between, the options really over there are between two vaccines, Covaxin of Bharat Biotech or the Zycov-D, which is a 3-dose Zydus Cadila vaccine, which is a DNA vaccine as well, both made in India. Interestingly, the Covishield has not been approved for kids just yet. All right. Having understood that, let's tell you what R.S. Sharma said a while ago, making that announcement on kids.
Children of 15 to 18 years of age, whether comorbidity or whether normal children, will be able to get the vaccine and will be able to register on the Goverment platform as before. Not have the voter ID card, for example, because they are less than 18 years of age. Some of them may not have Aadhaar or may not use Aadhaar. So we are allowing the student identity card also to be one of the 10th document in case of children between 15 to 18 years of age. And they will be able to register and they will be able to register from 1st of January.
All right, let's take it forward with our guest now. We've got Dr. Shahid Jameel joining us on the program, virologist, professor at Ashoka University. We've got Dr. Shashank Joshi with us, member Covid-19 task force in Maharashtra, and also with us today is Dr. Siddharth Kar. He is an epidemiologist at the University of Bristol in UK. Thanks so much for your time. I just want to begin with Dr. Joshi. Dr. Joshi, initial reports coming in and sources through them, NDTV is actually learning that there will be no cocktail of vaccines, as we have often discussed, or mix and match of vaccines happening in India. Your thoughts firstly on whether or how effective really is Covishield and Covaxin both when given as a third dose?
I think first of all, we should not prematurely comment because government has yet to come out with the policy document of the additional or the extra dose. One thing is very clear cut, that whatever that dose is called, whether it's booster, extra dose, or the heterologous boosting is always better than homologous boosting. That is what the science tells us from the global reportage.
Sorry, even I missed that last part. Could you repeat that again, Dr. Joshi?
Yeah. The heterologous boosting, which means mix and match, is always better than the same vaccine, which is homologous boosting. That is what the global science tells us.
Right.
In India, even now, there is no clarity from the government of India. And I think we should be patient and not jump to any newspaper reportage or anecdotal reportage that it's going to be the same vaccine again. After 2 Covaxins, it makes logical sense to give a Covishield. After 2 Covishields, what should be the next vaccine? Whether it should be Covishield, whether it should be something else, we don't know. And many of these vaccinations are starting by 10. We have 4 vaccines lined up for approval. One is the Covovax or Novavax from Serum. We have the Cobarex from the Biological Events. We have the Indian mRNA vaccine from Genova. And we also have the nasal Covaxin, which is nothing but Covishield inside it. It's adrenovector platform. So if these 4 things are before 10th of January, you might have either of them also as an extra dose. So I think let us not jump to any conclusions. Let us wait for a formal announcement from Government of India on this same.
I see. So not jumping to any conclusion, Dr. Joshi, and this is not on any newspaper report. This is what NDTV health reporters have actually, health ministry reporters have picked up on how the ministry is thinking so far. So that's where this is actually coming from. We wait to your right. We haven't seen a formal letter just yet, and we believe one is in the works and would be released by the end of the day. So we wait really for that to come. But Dr. Jamil, this interesting word which is being used, and Health Ministry also saying that this is just a precautionary dose, this is not a booster dose. They also say that a policy on booster dose will come later. But do you agree with Dr. Joshi that a mix and match of vaccines always gives you better results?
Well, Sonal, if you look at global data, then yes, heterologous boosting or mix and match gives you better responses. Now, whether you call it a booster or whether you call it a precaution dose or whatever, it's the same thing. All vaccines are precaution doses. You take a vaccine as a precaution for future disease. So I don't know why there is a new term being used. I can't explain it. It's the same thing, really.
Right. And you are also saying that actually a cocktail of vaccine, a mix and match, works better. I want to come to Dr. Siddhartha next. Your thoughts on which way this is going globally, if we were to take a clue on different counts, sometimes because of shortage of vaccines in UK and in other places, we've seen that a mRNA has been given as a booster to the existing vaccines.
Yes. So while I agree with the 2 other panelists that indeed, if you use a heterologous or a mix and match strategy, you do get higher antibody levels. Whether that translates into better effectiveness in the real world, that is still not known. We don't know how antibody levels translate. So what I simply mean to say is that the most recent data say that even if you were to give 3 shots of Covishield, that would give you enough antibodies, as it were, after 2 shots during the Delta wave of the epidemic. What this simply means is that having 3 shots is sufficient of the same this thing. So I kind of think that the government strategy, if they are going for not mix and match, is fine. You have to balance pragmatism in public health with the science, and the science does support going for 3 of the same as well.
Right, but Dr. Kar, this is true for Delta, you said, right? We don't know if this is actually going to work against Omicron.
in the latest data, there's been papers on preprint servers both from the Oxford and AstraZeneca groups. They do suggest that, yes, you do get higher levels of antibodies if you mix and match, but you do get significantly high levels of antibodies, twice as much as the baseline, even with 3 of Covishield. So if you have a very large supply of Covishield like we do in India, it is actually pragmatic to go in with a 3-dose regimen. You know, it's very difficult to, in public health, it's a balance of science and pragmatism. And I think speed of boosting is more important. You need to get more jabs to more people as quickly as possible. And if that means giving Covishield, so be it, you know, after 2 doses of Covishield.
I see. Let me get a quick response on that with Dr. Joshi.
That is reasonable. I think we want to vaccinate most people most of the times. So, you know, because of availability, supply, data generation, science, if they use the same vaccine, homologous boosting also, the 3rd dose always has a better antibody response. But, you know, as I said, the Indian science on this has been weak. In public domain, except one publication which was from Gorakhpur, which was a accidental, Covishield Covaxin showed that. Except that research paper, there is no generation of any data which is in public domain to show any strategy in India. I am certain the experts in the Ministry of Health have some insights in it, and whether they give the same dose as a 3rd extra dose or whether they give a boost, completely dependent on multiple factors, including free availability. And it won't make a major impact as long as we give it on time and as early as possible, as quickly as possible.
All right, let me get to Dr. Jameel next. And Dr. Jameel, I think the idea that Dr. Kar is also talking about is that increase the speed of boosters. Don't worry so much about the level of immunity that is coming with it. We've spoken about this at several levels, trying to understand how this entire mix and match of vaccines works. As of this moment, should availability, according to you, of vaccines be the priority of how decisions are being made?
Well, I do agree that a certain level of pragmatism is important. But also remember that you have a chance of maybe boosting a person once. You're not going to be boosting again and again. So you deploy the best tool that you have in your arsenal. And unfortunately, a 3rd dose of the Covishield over already 2 doses of Covishield is not your best option. You know, there is data on this. When the 3rd dose of Covishield will boost the antibody response about 3 times, giving a protein vaccine like Covovax will boost it almost 9 times. There's data available on it. And, you know, there's global data on it, published data. And, you know, Covovax has been sitting with the regulator after completing phase 3 in India for a while now. Why isn't that being deployed? You know, how pragmatism is fine, but don't you want to use the best tool in your toolkit?
Right. Especially when it is a made in India vaccine that is an alternative being talked about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as far as the other point is concerned, yes, I think in public health, it's also important to keep things simple. So from whatever we have seen so far with the policy, people who are 60 plus and have comorbidities will need a certificate from the doctor to get vaccinated. Now, that's looking for trouble. We know how that works in our country. It's going to be limited to people largely in urban settings, and it's going to create enough confusion. So let's wait till the government actually comes out with full information on what it wants to do.
You're right there, but lots of views here. We finally have to wait and see which way the government has gone in. But Dr. Jameel, I just want to come back to you. How effective really is Covaxin against Omicron? Is there any study which has worked on this?
No, I'm not aware of any study on Covaxin. I'm not even aware of any study on other killed virus vaccines like the Chinese vaccines or the French-Austrian vaccine, the Valneva. I'm not aware of any studies with Omicron.
Right. But you still say that it will give you better immunity, whether or not we know for sure if it works against Omicron.
Well, I don't know about Covaxin really, because killed viral vaccines have typically raised very poor antibody levels compared to other vaccines. It's nothing with Covaxin per se, it's the platform per se. And there is data on that. So if you're going to be looking at antibodies mainly for protection, then I think killed viral vaccines are not going to be working very well. I mean, there is a lot of data available on that.
All right, Dr. Kari, quickly want to respond to that?
I entirely agree about what Dr. Jamil said about Novavax or Covax, and obviously if new vaccines are authorized and sufficient production can be ramped up, yes, absolutely, you should go for heterologous mix and match strategies. But I am not entirely confident looking at the situation that's going to happen soon enough. You are going to face a Omicron wave within January and February. So again, I fully agree with Dr. Jamil that ideally you would have a protein vaccine or another platform, but goes back to the point of pragmatism. And there's nothing in the data to suggest that it's terrible to give 3 of Covishield. There is emerging data to say that there's at least a 2-fold rise. It's not as much as a mRNA vaccine, but it's still something, and it's maybe sufficient to get us through the wave. And all vaccines, I must repeat, do very well against hospitalization and severe disease. And that should be our main focus.
Yeah, of course. That's the bottom line here, really. But just to put two things together, what all of you agree on is the fact that a cocktail of vaccines actually gives you better immunity. That's one point. And the other that we're concluding is that dead virus vaccine does not even give you so many antibodies at the end of the day. It's a complex problem, Lily, on how we're going to go. And then when it comes to India, it's about numbers. It's going to be about the availability of these vaccines as well. Remember, 90% of the country actually has Covishield. There are very few who took Covaxin. So how the numbers are going to add up is going to be a challenge. I want to move to the vaccine for kids next. And I'll begin with Dr. Joshi there. Dr. Joshi, I looked at an entire world map tracker on vaccine for kids, and across the globe, two vaccines dominate, and that is Pfizer and Moderna. We don't see any other vaccine being used for kids anywhere else. We also don't see Covishield also, that is AstraZeneca, being used on kids, not in UK, not anywhere else. Here in India, we're going to start this process very, very soon. Your thoughts on that?
First of all, I am not worried what the world is using, because world has not done particularly great in terms of COVID, whether it is UK or USA. So let me be very transparent here. Number two, that the 2 Indian vaccines currently approved in that age group, number one is the Zydus COVID, which is a DNA vaccine. It's the first of its kind in the world.
Yeah.
And that vaccine has been approved between 12 to 18. We have data which the subject expert committee has seen. We need to see it in public domain. Number 2 is going to be the Covaxin, which is now approved between 2 to 18. So we have 2 made in India vaccines, which will be available for children. From a safety standpoint, it's absolutely good to go. So I am not at all worried, because the Pfizer vaccine has challenges with myocarditis below the age 30. So is Moderna. So I am not very comfortable. If I had a kid between 15 and 18, I would not be comfortable with either of these vaccines.
Oh, that's a strong statement.
That these 2 vaccines have a better safety.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Dr. Jamil?
We should have some faith in Indian science. And
all right. We seem to be losing Dr. Joshi's signal over there, but let me move to Dr. Jamil while we fix that line over there. Dr. Jamil, for kids, when it comes to getting a vaccine dose, Dr. Joshi has very strong views on how both Pfizer and Moderna are placed for kids. But also interestingly, in a couple of countries, we actually saw they're giving a smaller dosage of Pfizer and Moderna to kids between 5 to 11, and 12 to 18 is a full adult dose. How does that really work?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about kids vaccination in India, then Pfizer and talking about Pfizer and Moderna doesn't really make sense because those vaccines are not available to kids in India. And what is available to kids in India is Covaxin and Zycov-D. Both have been tested on children above 12 years of age. Both have been found to be safe and efficacious. So I think the policy is just fine. Either of those two vaccines should be fine. I mean, the only issue that I can foresee with Zycov-D is that it's a 3-dose vaccine instead of a 2-dose vaccine. Unless there are studies later done by the company and available to the subject expert committee that says that 2 doses are sufficient. But the advantage there is that it is given through a needle-free technology, so it's pain-free if you're giving it to kids. So I think on balance, both vaccines are good to give to kids, and I'm confident that they'll work well.
Right. I mean, just want to say as a bottom line, whatever vaccine is available should be taken, and kids should go ahead and parents should encourage taking of these vaccines as well. Dr. Kar, do you have any insight into what happened to that trial that was going on kids when it came to the AstraZeneca Covishield as we know it in India? Was that not completed? Did they find something? There's some reason why it's not being administered to kids?
Unfortunately, I don't know about the trial that you're mentioning. And I haven't, as Dr. Joshi said at the beginning, that I would like to see more Indian data in the public domain. Clearly, the subject matter committee has this data with them. And the key criteria in children and or anyone under 18 is simply that the vaccine has to be safe above all else. And as long as that criteria are met by both the Zydus Cadila vaccine and Covaxin, that is absolutely fine with me as well. I agree with Dr. Joshi. Again, the bottom line is that children so far, even in the Omicron wave, have not been significantly affected. They do spread the virus to their families. And India has a very large proportion under 18 in terms of the population. And those are good enough reasons to really push for vaccination under 18.
Right. Last comments really, and Dr. Joshi, if you could weigh in on this. We're looking at a 3-dose vaccine, which is Zycov-D for kids as well. Like Dr. Jamil was also mentioning, it's like a band-aid. You just patch it up on your arm and it just dissolves, those microneedles really dissolves the vial in your body gradually. As India prepares, are we looking at further? Should we be pushing for more vaccines coming out for kids? I know Biological E is working on trials. There is Novavax also working on trials as of this moment.
Clearly, we need more data, more vaccines from the Indian standpoint. And I think that is a need of the hour. So I don't see what Dr. Jamil is saying is very correct. We definitely need a larger plethora of vaccines in the pediatric space, and they will be available. And current vaccines also reasonable. We remember one thing, that there has also been a lot of natural exposure, which according to me, there is some hybrid immunity already in the Indian space, whether it's adult or pediatric both. With a seropositivity rate in pediatric and adult population between 80 and 90%, and then you are going to give any vaccine, you are still going to generate an antibody response. Remember, all these vaccines are early generation vaccines on the ancestral strain. We still have not innovated on the Omicron strain or the Delta strain. So it's work in progress. Vaccine innovation will continue. India is the vaccine pharmacy of the world, and we'll definitely get better vaccines from Indian manufacturers and global manufacturers.
All right, Dr. Jamil, Dr. Joshi, Dr. Kar, thank you so much for your time and giving us your insights into how exactly this entire business of mix and match of vaccines and even those on kids actually develops.